Hello, welcome to this Sustainability and Climate Action Plan SCAP Update recorded webinar. I'm Christine Luong, Sustainability Manager with the City of Palo Alto.
And my name is Jonathan Avenshine, Assistant Director of Utilities Resource Management, City of Palo Alto.
Welcome to this City of Palo Alto staff presentation on our Sustainability and Climate Action Plan. This presentation is intended to accompany a City Council action item on April 19th, 2021. In this presentation, we'll provide an overview of the results of a staff and consultant analysis of how the community could achieve its ambitious sustainability goal of 80% reduction in emissions from 1990 levels by 2030. This analysis is preliminary, and there's more work to be done. But we believe the insights gained so far can be the basis for a robust discussion of the community's long-term sustainability plans, as well as ideas for programs the city can implement in the near term. In this presentation, we'll talk about the climate action goals and key actions analyzed and their cost effectiveness, the emissions reductions the analysis projected, and the total cost of implementation and how those costs might be financed. We'll talk about a relatively new topic in sustainability, community carbon neutrality, as well as some additional analysis we recommend we do, and some emissions reduction programs we can launch right now. We'll also talk about the cost of inaction on climate goals. In 2019, Palo Alto emitted an estimated 482,327 metric tons of carbon dioxide equivalent from the residential, commercial, industrial, transportation, waste, water, and municipal sectors. In comparison to the 1990 base year, that is approximately a 38.2% decrease in total community emissions, despite a population increase of 23.6% during that same time period. For the 2019 greenhouse gas inventory to comply with the GPC basic protocol, which is the greenhouse gas inventory methodology used by most cities, additional existing emission sources were included for the first time. Airport emissions, off-road vehicles, Caltrain commuter rail, composting, and Palo Alto landfill gas flaring. Wastewater biosolids treatments is a new emission source that was added due to the closure of the sewage sludge incinerators. Palo Alto landfill gas fugitive emissions are also no longer included since the landfill has since been capped. A total of 23,493 metric tons of carbon dioxide equivalent was added from greenhouse gas emission sources that were not included previously, accounting for approximately 4.9% of total emissions. As a result of these additions, it's no longer possible to make a direct comparison with previous inventories. We can still compare to the 1990 baseline, but with the understanding that total greenhouse gas emissions would be about 41.2% reduced from 1990 levels, rather than a 38.2% reduction below 1990 levels, if we don't include the additional emissions sources. At this time, staff does not recommend adjusting previous inventories or the 1990 baseline to include the additional emission sources. We'll need to include the additional emission sources in future greenhouse gas inventories to comply with the GPC basic protocol, but for comparisons to the 1990 baseline, we could either remove them for comparison purposes or acknowledge that methodologies for calculating greenhouse gas emissions are constantly improving and evolving, and that we'll strive to use the most accurate method for calculating greenhouse gas emissions instead of trying to duplicate the methodology used in 1990. So, as a reminder, in order to achieve the 80 by 30 goal, Palo Alto must meet a greenhouse gas emissions target of about 156,000 metric tons of carbon dioxide equivalent. And the main sources of Palo Alto's greenhouse gas emissions are simple. Approximately a third comes from natural gas consumption in buildings, and approximately 2/3 from gasoline and diesel vehicles. Road transportation, which is this big red section, represents Palo Alto's largest source of greenhouse gas emissions at about 65%. About a third of road transportation emissions are from residents, a third from commuters, and a third from visitors to Palo Alto. As mentioned previously, this year's inventory includes several additional sources for transportation-related emissions. Those additional transportation sources represent about 4.5% of total emissions. Natural gas consumption, the big blue section, represents the second largest source of greenhouse gas emissions at about 32%. About 15% of total emissions is from residential use of natural gas, 13.9% from commercial, and 3% from industrial.